and gentlemen, Mark Zuckerberg's Meta has apologized to India for an inadvertent error, quote unquote, by their chief. Essentially, for a podcast where Mark said 2024 was a big election year around the world in all these countries, including India, just like a ton of countries that had elections and the incumbents basically lost every single one, while equating it to how people lost their faith in governments post-COVID. This comes a day after BJP MP Nishikant Dubey, who heads the Parliamentary Committee on Communications and Information Technology, said that his team would summon Meta for what it claimed as misinformation, incorrect information that tarnishes the image of any democratic country. Since the BJP and Prime Minister Modi in reality have returned for a consecutive third. Apology done. But a lot has happened around Meta over the last 2 weeks, to some saying it is, quote-unquote, zucking up to Donald Trump, US President-elect, and towing the line which is marked not just by Trump but his buddy, Elon Musk, the man who owns X. That has been at the center of a huge debate around free speech versus hate speech during US elections, and even in other countries for that matter. Seems like Zuckerberg is heading just that way. Why, you ask? From saying they take misinformation seriously in 2016 to just few days back after a meeting with Trump at Mar-a-Lago, Meta has had a change of heart, saying recent elections also feel like a cultural tipping point, and they are moving towards once again prioritizing speech. Read, free expression, restoring free expression on their platforms, focusing on reducing mistakes, simplifying policies. But is unregulated free speech inclusive of hate speech? Who draws the line? Is Meta bowing down to political risk of being targeted? Remember, Meta has donated $1 million to Trump's inauguration fund. And when it says instead of working with third-party checkers, it would shift to community notes program where users write and rate notes that appear next to specific posts, very similar to Elon Musk's approach to claiming they will simplify their content policies and get rid of a bunch of restrictions on topics like immigration and gender that are just out of touch with mainstream discourse. What does it mean for US, for India, for elections, and for ordinary exchanges of ordinary people? Remember, in 2024, World Economic Forum ranked misinformation and disinformation as #1 threat for India, worse than infectious diseases for that matter. Let me at this point straight introduce my panelists. I'm being joined by Manish Bariyar, who's a political analyst, Sanjeev Unyal, who's an advocate and political analyst, Kamruzman Chaudhary, who's a political analyst, Dr. Padmini Panigrahi, who's a social activist and influencer. She should be joining us in a short while from now. Aditya Pratap, who's an advocate, and Pavan Duggal, who's a cyber security expert. Thank you very much, all of you, for joining us. Mr. Pavan Duggal, straight to you first. Let's just start with the first basic question. The apology for what they have called an inadvertent error was expected. It was necessary. But are you surprised at the pace at which has come? Just within hours of, the MP and the ministers taking to social media, targeting and saying that the chief is going to be summoned. The pace at which that apology has come, how do you look at that? And the apology, of course. Let's just start with the basic first.
The pace with which the apology has come is a growing reflection of a recognition of the fact that India is no longer on the fringes. India is right at the center stage of political thought process, and no service provider, no company anywhere in the world can go ahead and ignore India. More so from the perspective of Meta, where India is one of the biggest markets for its various users. Having said that, therefore, this particular new phase of Indian ascendancy is a remarkable new development. Remember, it's this very service providers who had earlier been using the dodging game, in the sense that we had a number of cases prior in point of time when the parliamentary standing panel would go ahead and summon people or service providers and their representatives in the US, and they would keep on dodging appearing before the said panels on one pretext or the other, whether it was Twitter or whether it was someone else. But the fact now remains is that after this COVID-19 epidemic being over, and now with this new kind of a stable India that's coming up, it's but natural to expect that people will provide far more attention to India, Indian polity and Indian thought process. But the speed with which it has come is only showing the way how transforming is happening in terms of the way the world is looking at India. India is getting more important in the eyes of the global community, and therefore the global community quickly realizes that if you're going to mess up with your India operations or Indian political thought leadership, it can actually have a direct impact upon your economic prospects and your future prospects as well. So I think it's all said and done. It's a win-win for India,
Absolutely.
but it's also recognition of the fact that India now needs to flex its muscles more.
You know, Pawan Dugal, I have to come to you for a second question as well. But before that, since you mentioned about how big a market really India is for Meta, let's just look at some numbers that matter to Meta really. Facebook, over 1 in 10 users in India. Instagram, nearly 1 in 4 users are in India. WhatsApp, over 1 in 4 users are in India. And these are just about the monthly data that we are trying to break down. There seems to be at least a 43% hike in profits, for that matter, that Meta has been getting in just about a year when it comes to India. These are just very strong numbers. But coming back to what really our focus is, Mr. Dugal, for the changes that have been announced, I mean, let's just look at it. Meta, for a very long time, had a very different policy change from what, say, other social media wings have had, including X for that matter. They both had a very different characteristic, but with what's happened in the US, with the meeting at Mar-a-Lago, and the toning down of filters, as it were, whether it was doing away with fact checkers, which for a very long time, Mark Zuckerberg himself and Meta as a platform as a whole really batted for. They said their fact checkers were independent. They said their fact checkers had separate policies that they would be signatories to for ensuring that they are not going to be partisan, to ensure that they are going to be transparent. And there was so much that was said always about this. They have done away with this. They're going to be doing away with all of this. They're diluting what they have called filters or safeguards when it comes to usage of words, when it comes to, say, gender. And many say possibly women, LGBTQ+, children are likely to be affected more. I don't know. I want to ask you about this specifically. How is this to be looked at? One, of course, this is happening in US. We don't know whether this is going to play out in India or not. Now or later, we don't know. Would you have clarity on that? And how is this supposed to be seen?
Well, clearly, Facebook is adapting itself remarkably well of Meta in terms of how the political changes are happening. Now, with the new Trump administration coming in, with increasing clout of Elon Musk, it's getting increasingly very clear that free speech is going to be a big ticket item. No longer can you just go ahead and dodge it. No longer can you just bat up for other kind of causes which run parallelly or even contrary to the entire concept of free speech. Therefore now, sensing the change of mood of the thought leadership, of political leadership in the US, sensing the changed ground realities, Meta has decided to transform itself completely in accordance with changing ground realities. Now that's happening in the US. Does that mean that same will happen in India? I'm not so sure. Why? Because in India, they've always been having this double kind of an approach in terms of mentality. The adoption of community standards of the US for Indian ecosystem has always been a very contentious kind of an issue. So if you think that free speech in India is also going to be given the same kind of impotence or priority or prominence as far as India is concerned, I'm not so sure given their documented stand. Already we have seen that the track record of service providers, including Meta, in terms of their grievance dispute redressal mechanisms has been far from satisfactory. And more often than not, they are increasingly pushing their users to go to courts of law to get court orders before they can remove any kind of a content. So I think it's a mixed bag. Too early to celebrate. But yes, change has happened because the storm is right ahead in front of you. Therefore, Meta is changing. But whether that particular change will have an impact upon countries like India or other countries is something that we'll have to wait and watch. But yes, if India decides to crack the whip, in case if India decides to effectively implement the Information Technology Rules 2021 and the DPDP Act 2023, maybe Meta, like other players, may be forced to go ahead and replicate the same changes in India that they would be making or displaying in the US context as well. So all said and done, it's just action and a reaction approach. They've realized the writing is right on the wall. Let's read the writing and let's modify our strategies, because they are riding a running tiger and they want to calibrate their strategies while continuing to run the tiger.
Right. At this point, let me just welcome Dr. Padmini Panigrahi to our discussion. Very good evening. Thank you so much for tuning in, for joining us at this point. You're a social activist, you're an influencer, you're very active on social media, and you're a mum as well. Why do I say this? Because we were just discussing, we were having a preliminary discussion on what's the changes that's happened with Meta, the way it's following, say, possibly X. As a person who uses social media extensively as a mother, how do you look at these changes? Of course, for now it's in the US. We don't know how much of this is going to come into play in India and how soon, if at all, it does. But as somebody very strongly, with a very strong presence and follower base on social media, do you have any concerns at all, or do you welcome it all?
Yeah, I think social media is also plays an important part in each of our life. But from the government point of view, government is taking care of all the procedures, and he's trying to restrict few things from the social media. So I think it's always better if we impose some legal thing or anything related to our mental health and for the coming future. And we must follow the rules of the government also, that because it's like an organization. So we have to follow certain rules. That would be better in the long run. I think so. It's for the children also. As a mother, the children also should limit their usage of social media. So that would help them in the physical and mental growth altogether. I think so.
All right. Okay, thank you so much for your thoughts on that. But very quickly, let me get in just get in Aditya Pratap at this time. Aditya Pratap, here's the thing. We just heard Pawan Duggal speak about this, and he said free expression and a changing regime is pressing on. And that's what we are looking at. And we just also heard Dr. Padmini. Dr. Padmini is saying there should be some regulation. So what is free speech? Of course, it's very different when it comes to India and the US. If you think India is free, while US is much more less restrictive. It has far lesser restrictions than when you look at India, far less boundaries than when you look at India. But how do you decide about what is free speech, what is hate speech, and what is free expression? Does it include hate speech, and who decides what's hate speech?
See, first and foremost, freedom of speech is enshrined in the Constitution. Article 19 very clearly says that all persons shall have the right to free speech. And thereafter, 19.2 permits the state to frame law which can impose reasonable restrictions for certain criteria, such as imposition of public order, etc. Now, Meta has clearly said that it is disbanding the fact-checking unit. Now, if you remember, there was one more Supreme Court ruling in which also the center had sought to set up Bombay High Court or Supreme Court ruling. Center had sought to set up a fact-checking unit, and then the court had squashed it. It had set it aside. So clearly, what I was, in my opinion, Meta's views, Meta's decision to disband the fact-checking unit is actually pretty much in sync with Indian law and policy. Because, see, the freedom of speech is unfettered, unrestricted. And in case someone abuses the freedom of speech, there are appropriate remedies in law to take care of him, to hold him accountable. You have civil remedies, you have criminal remedies, you have the remedy of defamation, which in case if a person in his private capacity is affected. On the other hand, you also have certain provisions in the BNS also, Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita, which provides severe penalties for spreading rumors or attempting to create a public mischief or create a public nuisance, etc., by use of such fake content. So primarily, in my opinion, Facebook's Meta's decision to stop its fact-checking unit prima facie does not in any way offend India's legal regime. In short, it is actually Meta's, because see, what is Meta? Meta is an internet intermediary. It is the people. It is the people who log into Meta and express their views. Now you may remember the bulk of the people are human beings. They are citizens of India who log into Meta and express their opinions, and therefore Meta is a platform where citizens exercise their right to free speech. And yes, in India. And further, if you see, we also have the internet intermediaries rules which are provided. So if someone comes and posts, exactly, why should Meta on its own become a self-censor? Tomorrow, can you expect a newspaper in India to do self-censorship? The answer is no. Likewise, when a person goes to Meta, he exercises his freedom of speech when he writes a post on Meta. Now, on the other hand, in case something offensive or something alarming comes up, you have the internet intermediaries guidelines which have been framed by the central government, in which a notice can be given 24 hours, 48 hours to remove the content, and there's an appellate authority and a proper grievance redressal mechanism provided therein. So clearly, Meta's press release,
That's interesting. Can I get in Sanjeev Unyal at this point? Sanjeev, do you agree with what Aditya is saying? I'm asking you this for a very simple question, because look at what look at what X is doing, whether in US or in India. In fact, X has been also pulled up a couple of times, but X has very clearly maintained its stand. It seems to just say that it's allowing its platform for whatever reasons for free expression. So if at all there is a request to take down something from the government of India, it first sends a notification. It says that, we are being asked to take it down, but we will not, because we stand for freedom of expression, or free expression as it were. Meta seems to be following just that line. So if it's free expression, then how does it get regulated? Because X has been very strongly standing against regulation, particularly government intervention. Sanjeev Unyal?
Okay, I'm really sorry. There are two things. What is reflecting from a question is that, first of all, I should congratulate the administration and the aggressiveness as well as the integrity of this country. That the platform which is supposed to be the king as far as the social denominations are concerned, they are coming at the knee of this country's administration, because they are, after all, they have to do the business. Economy is always on the top of any company. So now they have apologized, first of all. And I think the credit goes to that Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita, the new regulations which have come into the picture in 2023, Section 196, Section 197, which are very, as far as I think they're taking left and right the culprits over here. So Meta knows exactly that once they will definitely lose the business, as well as they will be on the books of that BNS, BNSS. And so the rules and regulations in this country again playing a very great role besides the very good strict administration. So I think X and here Meta, there is a lot of, there is nothing in the name. There's a old quotation, but Meta has changed its names. Why? In 2021, they were supposed to change from Facebook to Meta. The reason being that now the defamation, the derogatory type of that platform they were carrying, that were now they want to vanish that platform. So that's why change their name also Meta. So name plays a great role because after coming into the picture, the Meta, they've changed a lot also. This I have seen number of times. So name also is playing a great role in this case also. So as far as this whole episode is concerned, so rules, regulations of this country, Supreme Court's jurisdiction is also there. Supreme Court is saying number of times on different jurisdiction, different citations, different judgments or different part. So, but in totality, I think the things are in a better position now. People should be giving an answer what they are seeing, what they are doing exactly from different platforms. Free speech could be one of the part of our human, I think, freedom, but it should be within some periphery, some norms, some denominations should be fixed for these people who are doing hate speeches, and which are not very good for any country, very good for the civilization also.
Aditya Pratap, free speech should be regulated when it comes to hate speech, but how does that get differentiated?
See, first and foremost, why regulate? See, we already have a very strong penal mechanism in place. Anyone who defames a person, you have the law of defamation against him. Anyone tries to incite a mob or does hate speech, the appropriate provisions of the Bharatiya Nyaya Sahita, in which creating religious enmity, hatred, and other things, offending the sovereignty and unity of India, sedition, all of these sections are already there to penalize such wrongdoers. The question is, why do you want the government to go a step beyond? See, remember, on one hand, we have the criminal statutes which pose a strong deterrent. Number two, I would like to echo the words of the Bombay High Court in its judgment in which it struck down the fact-checking unit. How can the government be an arbiter of what is right, what is wrong? Tomorrow, who knows, the government will say,
but that is government.
This, as per the fact-checking unit, this version of facts is correct. Yes. No, likewise, so a company, Meta is a private company. And why should a private company take upon itself the onus of saying that we are an internet intermediary? We are just a platform. Why should we take up the onus of determining what a person has posted is right or wrong? Let the concerned aggrieved person initiate legal remedies. Let someone else. Why should Meta on its own become a watchdog? See, we are dealing with a situation where
Pawan Dugal, please come in.
Internet
Pawan Dugal, I know this is a great time to get in Kamruzman Chaudhary as well as Manish Bariyar, but give me a few minutes. Pawan Dugal, just come in, respond to what Mr. Advocate Aditya is saying at this point. It's interesting because let's look at what Meta has said till now. Meta said they have third-party fact-checkers. They have a contract of transparency and being bipartisan and so forth. Aditya is saying, what's the need? Why does a company need to do something like that? What would you take on this?
Well, clearly, Meta is an intermediary under the Section 21W of the Information Technology Act 2000. And as a part of its statutory obligations, it's required to exercise due diligence while it discharges its obligations under the law. But the due diligence does not mean that you become the sole judge, the sole prosecutor, and the sole party to the entire proceedings. You are yourself at best an intermediary, and therefore it's better that you have a hands-on approach. But the moment you want to have fact-checkers, you want to create your own level of your vision of the prism for other stakeholders, which I think is something that's alien as far as the Information Technology Act is concerned, as far as the IT Rules 2021 are concerned. Why? Because the law says you are a neutral party. Please be a neutral party. But if you start taking the role of being a judge, then you are actually contravening the decision of the Supreme Court in the case of Shreya Singhal versus Union of India, where the Supreme Court said as an intermediary, just be a service provider. Don't be an arbiter. Don't try to judge things. Don't try to play a subjective role. But when you appoint your fact checkers, you're effectively trying to find out an element of subjectivity. You want it to be objective, but you want to give some kind of a viewpoint of subjectivity. And mind you, the fact checkers are again going to see the Indian context.
That was
or
their
the
way
Indian
of ensuring
content.
accountability.
Well, the accountability is that you have in place appropriate sound dispute resolution mechanisms so that any people who have any problems can resort to your dispute resolution mechanisms. But majority of the service providers, including Meta, by and large, have not been seen to be much compliant with the timelines of dispute resolution mechanism as have been given under Rule 3.2 of the Information Technology Rules 2021. On top of it, as service providers, their primary job is to ensure compliance with Rule 3 of the IT Rules 2021. At no point of time does the IT Rules, Rule 3 of IT Rules 2021 mandate them to go in the direction of fact-checking unit. And in any case, now the fact-checking unit, the portion has been now set aside by the High Court. Well, it's an important issue to realize that they will have to come within the limited mandate of the Lakshman Rekha that the law has created for service providers. If they go beyond this, they actually risk not just getting exposed to legal consequences, but also losing their statutory exemption from legal liability under Section 79 of the Information Technology Act 2000.
Okay. Dr. Padmini Panigrahi, you have something to say. Please go ahead. Dr. Padmini Panigrahi?
Yes, as a social worker, when I see nowadays, if you go and visit any rural areas, then you will see what are the new generation and upcoming generation, what are they doing. Earlier, when I used to visit those areas, they used to play, they used to interact, they do lot of other activities. Now, if you enter in any day, around almost every day we work in the rural areas. Then I found all of them are from 5 o'clock, 5:30, sitting with the mobile, and they are just scrolling the screen. And it's not about knowledge and the physical activity or producing anything for the society, and they are not in a positive way. And they are always over just holding the mobile or gadget, Facebook or Insta, and always busy everywhere in making reels. So it is not only the...
Okay, I understand what you're trying to say. I mean, there are obviously a lot of patterns and changes, differences when it comes to urban and rural consumption, but this is one place where the urban-rural divide really isn't there, because that's a common phenomena. Social media, their usage across generations, for that matter, if I can, we can really speak. But Kamrusman, if I can come to you at this point, Kamrusman Chaudhary, most of our panelists saying here that, listen, there is no need for such filters. Let there be what needs to be done. Let there be free expression. Politically, how do you look at this, considering elections? There's an election season currently underway. Elections keep happening and going. Now, we don't know whether it's going to be one nation, one election very soon. But nonetheless, every year you have some sort of elections otherwise happening. And remember what the World Economic Forum has said. It's the #1 challenge for India. That's misinformation and disinformation. Some may say hoax theories, some may say conspiracy theories, whatsoever. But with what's happening, the change in the social media, their usage and how it is functioning, politically, do you have concerns?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, particularly let me speak about India's context, and that let me extrapolate with what's happening around the world. India being one of the most populated countries in the world, Meta as a company has got absolute business interest in India, nothing more, nothing less. But being an intermediary, when people say that it has got no role in disseminating information, but I believe that's absolutely rubbish and bogus. Because you see, once a message has been fabricated, a misinformation or a disinformation or a fabricated news or a motivated news, when it has been published in the WhatsApp groups or in the Facebook groups, what's happened within seconds, it travels millions of kilometers across the length and breadth of India. You take a bite of the particular person, clip it, and then you send it across the social media. It goes every nook and corner of India. So the argument that there should not be any fact-checking unit within the Meta or let's say other social media platforms, I believe it's absolutely wrong. Even in countries like the UK, where there is very strict penalty on such misuse of the platforms, like I believe in UK it is around $24 million penalty, or 10% of their annual revenue, worldwide revenues are imposed as penalty. So it's imperative upon these platforms to check the misinformation that is being spread. And particularly in a sensitive country like India, where there are two distinct ideologies at play in India. So you believe that India being a sensitive and in an emotional country or emotional people like us, any type of sensitive content which without fact check is being spread across the country can create disaster for India. Secondly, most importantly, the government has already found that social media is a very important way to disseminate its information. Last year only, I believe in a report by a news channel that in 3 months, in January to March, the Uttar Pradesh government spent around 37 crores in ad revenue on Meta only. And it has brought out a policy wherein social media influencers will be used to, they will be given salary of around 8 lakhs rupees per month to spread their government's message. Now we all know what message the government wants to spread across the country. It's all political in nature. Maybe disinformation and misinformation may be there.
UP may have come out with written guidelines for that, but that's a given. Governments across states do that, including Congress-led governments for that matter, isn't it?
Yeah, I believe that's wrong. That's wrong. You should not be using social media to disseminate your ideology out here. Why I say this wrong? If these issues are not fact-checked and let into the public domain, it creates more misinformation. So I believe, as an Indian citizen, I believe
Manish
my
Barian,
son,
how
what
would
he is
you
studying
respond
or
to
what
this,
is
Manish
looking
Barian?
in the social media should be an accurate information.
Very regressive view, Sneha ji. A lot of people are not able to really understand that how technology is actually moving. So I'll go beyond the discussion which has been happening up till now. You know, the discussion is about whether actually Facebook can really restrict any kind of information at all. Because with AI coming up, I think Mark Zuckerberg understands that fact-checking is dead. You can't do it. Because the pace of technology is so fast. You have 3D printing, so you would have an entire manufacturing sector being dead. So you can understand how, you know, with AR and VR, virtual reality coming up, you would find that entire information is going to be processed in a very different way. So for anyone talking about social media only is really surprising because, you know, media is there, other forms of information is there. And why do you think that the people of this country are immature? We are a pretty, we have proved ourselves to be a very mature democracy. People understand. And please do not, question the wisdom of the people. And just because 1 or 2 social media posts people are going to see and decide the fate of the country is something which is pretty ludicrous. I don't think we have ever done that. And I don't think that in future also we are going to do that. Not at all. So I think these are very immature statements. It's a technology platform.
But what about algorithms? What about algorithms that favor, say, a political party? And that's been also a debate in the United States as well. There's no reason that something like that may not happen in India. That's also been a heart of a debate for Russia as well, during the war as well. So how does one look at algorithms? It's not just about factual, non-factual, propaganda, echo chambers. It's also about algorithms.
See, even let's take up about algorithm. They are neutral, right? It's the people who are the fact checkers who are the ones who are really deciding the fact that this is hate speech or this is a speech they should go. But we know that when 2 people meet, there is politics. Who decides that these are the fact checkers whether they themselves are correct or not. I think there has been a lot of suppression of free speech in the name of, regulating social media. I feel that it is one of a very strong and powerful medium, and US elections tell you, because the mainstream media would never say a lot of things which otherwise the rest of the people of the country were thinking. So I think there is a huge change that has happened, and maybe Mark Zuckerberg has also understood that he was in the wrong, and he's just correcting his error, because otherwise
Kamalman Chaudhary, how would you respond to this? Is it Mark Zuckerberg understanding that he was in the wrong, he had a wrong strategy, or is it just bowing down to a political risk right before him for his business and for his platform?
No, absolutely, it's business only, nothing more, nothing less about it. Because you see, Mark Zuckerberg has no scope in China, because China will not allow X, neither will Facebook, nor Instagram or WhatsApp is not there in China. So the most important market that is there is the US and the Indian markets that are available to him. With Elon Musk controlling the Trump administration, as we are made to believe, Mark Zuckerberg is facing some competition, a stiff competition in the US markets. So he cannot go out of sync with the Indian government's policies, though we consider that as regressive with compared to free speech is concerned. But he I believe, by acceding to a lot of governmental pressures from a lot of free countries, I believe that's a step taking backward for the world as a whole and for free speech in general. Fact checkers need to remain out there. Otherwise, you see what fact checkers have done to the India-Bangladesh relationship out here. We know what has happened between Israel and Palestine. We have known what is happening in Russia and Ukraine. The geopolitical situation, the economy of a country, the business of a country, all are dependent on social media right now. So it's very important that there's a check and balance maintained in the near future. Otherwise, it's going to be a uni-world.
Okay, Aditya Pratap, very quickly, if I can come in, while you propagate free expression, do you have concerns that free expression may really be targeting certain groups that possibly do not have acceptance the way they should be accepted? Say, for example, LGBTQ+, or several other groups. In fact, many are saying that free expression across social media groups is only going to make it a more toxic place for even women and children, for that matter.
See, as I said, okay, let us say offensive comments against women. We have, again, Bharatiya Nyaya Sahita outraging the modesty of a woman, denigrating, then abusive language, other things. We have Section 67
let's be practical. How many people will actually go and file a complaint against Meta or X or XYZ? You have to bear the brunt of it on a daily basis. I mean, not everybody will be able to go out and file a complaint and fight that.
See, but for these things, then there's an expedited procedure which is provided under the Internet Intermediary Rules. See, because as I said, when the Bombay High Court decision struck down the center's fact-checking unit, what was the reality? That it was Meta's discretion whether to set up a fact-checking unit or not. And in this case, it set it up, and now Meta has said we are disbanding it. So, when we come to it, if you talk about certain groups, now let's suppose you have different political ideologies. Again, what is the lens? No. See, fine, after praising it, then they withdraw it. But when you talked about different people, different political groups, different LGBT groups, etc., again, what the law says, number one, are any of the comments offending the unity and the security and sovereignty of India? Not at all. Are they likely to cause social order? No, not at all. In fact, to the contrary, I can see. Let's suppose what is the objective of a fact checker?
How do we know? Of a fact checker are you saying no, Aditya Pratap?
See,
how are you saying no?
See, no, I am simply saying what is the objective of fact checker? Whether what is being said is truth or false. But again, for that purpose, see, even if a person writes something false, the question will arise is it likely to disturb communal harmony? Is it likely? See, if a person does rumor mongering, again, the law is there to deal with him. Because the trouble is, there are lots of things which are shades of grey. True, false is black and white. So the thing is that in the cycle of black and white, you cannot trap too many shades of grey. Like things which are abstract, things which are more in the natures of opinions and views. Because to remember, the fact checker cannot predict what a user is going to write. Ultimately, that user is going to put it on the forum, and then it is for the people to judge whether it is likely to cause disturbance or not, whether it is illegal in any way or not. Because see, the law is not concerned with true or false. As a person, you are free to lie. The only thing the law prohibits you is do not lie on oath in the witness box, because that will constitute perjury. So,
okay, Pavan Dugal, I want to get you in. It's a very interesting point that Aditya Pratap makes. But let me ask you a socio-psychological fallout of this. Are we heading largely to a situation where you have to fend for yourself? You find it toxic, move out. You find it unpleasant, move out. You find it hateful, move out. Because how many of you or how many of us who find it difficult or who are victims, who claim that they are victims of, say, toxicity or people targeting them for whatever reasons, how many of them can really take the time out, file a case, fight for it, and take it on?
Clearly, we are working and moving towards a situation where we are going to be all on our own. If you're expecting justice, if you're expecting equity from the service provider, you're going to be mistaken. If you're wanting to expect that the grievance redressal mechanisms would work, you'd be surprised that they don't. If you think that other people are going to come to your rescue because you are being targeted, trolled, attacked, bullied online or potentially made nuisance of, then don't expect any help, because no help is coming. So therefore, when you are in any case already have come into the new cyber world order, where the golden age of cybercrime has begun, you should not be very hopeful of the fact that the service providers will jump to your rescue. They will not. In fact, they're only looking at you as mere data objects whose data is what they want to monetize on. Therefore, in a scenario like this, we will have to learn to distrust anything that we see. We should have an element of mistrust in our minds. We should first have our own selfish interest to the forefront, which is first protect me, myself, my reputation, my goodwill, my freedom, and rather than expecting the ecosystem to work for me. The ecosystem is not working, and the grievance redressal mechanisms under the IT rules are not at all working. The law seems to be broken up, and till such time the law does not come up with more effective remedies for the users, you are still on your own. So the quicker you wake up to that growing realization, the better it is. We hope the law changes. We hope the service providers become more empathetic to you and have more empathy, but that goes still long, drawn out kind of a utopian vision. Okay. That's not happening. Therefore, please go ahead and protect yourself. Otherwise, you are in deeper trouble.
I think very, very important words, and particularly for adults who even have their children on social media, this is something that you'll have to think of. Sanjeev Unyal, very quickly, would you agree or disagree with what Pavan Dugal has said?
Absolutely right. I'll give an example. If this is a virtual platform, these companies are providing to you. You have to come, and intermediary, you have to do whatsoever you are liking, you're not liking. You are putting something there on their platform. If you come on a mall, if you're going in a mall and mall is providing different shops to different retailers, then who will be responsible for the end users after all? That the mall who is providing the space to different retailers. So here, why you are not responsible? Then you are providing a virtual space. So virtual space can be compared with the actual space. So actual space, the rules and regulations are entirely different, and virtual space entirely different. You cannot sail in two boats. So I think Dugal is perfectly, he's right, absolutely right.
Okay, okay.
Can I have a vote on this?
Last parting shot right now with Dr. Padmini Panigrahi. As a woman and an influencer, the changing contours of social media, of how the social media space and ecosystem is working, what's on the top of your mind at this point?
I think the government should take not fully, completely, but some restriction and for the upcoming, for the safety and security of the upcoming generation. Because as a country, India, we are also, I think, India is just like a bigger family. We all are part of it. So we must focus to be united, and we think about our future, our next generations, what they will do, their safety, their security. That is also very important. And most of the time, their creativity, their mental health. I have also two children. I'm just saying it, when they are not much into social media, so they are into professionalism. They are writing, they are reading, and they are singing and doing other activity. Our culture, our tradition, they are keeping it. I'm also an artist, so I keep on pursuing and practicing when I stay away from social media. And
Okay.
definitely, social media is a platform to showcase your talent, and we can use it as a positive media or a medium to showcase our talent instead of showing and
Okay.
imposing and false news, fake things. So most of the time, like
I
all
think that
the
comes with a
kids
prism, it
start.
comes with a perspective, because as some of the panelists argued, your hate is somebody else's love. But one thing that really seems to be getting clearer with each moment is these lines are definitely getting blurred, and the social media ecosystem largely seems to only echo that. Manish Bariyar, Sanjeev Unyal, Kamruzman Chaudhary, Dr. Padmini Panigrahi, Aditya Pratap, as well as Palwan Duggal, thank you very much for your time. It's time for a very short break. On the other side, news and updates.